remember just seeing the final number at 3.6. And I remember texting the consignor, the next day. Actually, he texted me first, but I think he sent one of those like eyeball, type emojis. And it's just one of those moments you just don't forget, because him and I were talking about 100 grand, 150 grand, when we got the jersey. And even that would have been not an easy task, right? Luckily, we got the jersey. It photo matched. Crazy story is the jersey was actually consigned to a competitor earlier, like a year earlier, and they actually gave it back.
Welcome to today's episode of the Game Used Podcast. Excited for what we have in store today. Before we get started, I want to mention we're brought to you by Resolution Photo Matching. As always, if you have any Game Used memorabilia that you're interested in getting authenticated and getting photo matched, shoot us an email at info@resphotomatching.com and we can help you out there. So let's jump into our guest for today. This is someone who has been heavily involved in the game use space specifically for a number of years. Previously, he was the auction manager at Steiner Sports, and for the last number of years has been with Goldin. He's currently has the title of Head of Revenue at Goldin. Mr. Dave Amerman. Dave, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be able to come on here with you and talk game used, because a lot of these cards, a lot of modern cards floating around right now. But I've loved game used for decades. So
yeah, I was really excited to get you on because you have had that specifically game used experience. I mean, obviously now you're kind of the number 2 guy at Goldin, and so obviously you're dealing with a ton of really significant pieces. But, even in, your past, it's not just been, 90% cards and 10% game used for you, like it is for some people in the hobby. You've been hands-on with game used for a long time now. And so I'm excited to dive into it with you. But to start off, tell me a little bit about how you originally got into sports memorabilia. I know you did your own business to start. Talk a little bit about how you got started.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was certainly collecting right before the business came about. So, started buying cards actually in the early 90s, 91. I guess I'm dating myself right off the bat here, but as a kid, just my brother collected. I had a collection. And, it just kind of grew and grew, and I became more and more into it. And at some point, probably in the late 90s, early 2000s, I found a real liking for game used. I think the cards to me were cool, but you could make more than one. And there was nothing better than the jersey that the guy wore during that special moment, or that was even on the card. And, for me, there were so many less jerseys and bats and things like that I thought that was just, in my mind, I thought, well, this stuff's got to be worth way more than the cards are worth, at least maybe in the long run, because there's less of them and it's the actual items they use. So for me, I kind of drew a liking into that. And, then LeBron came out and I started buying LeBron game used anything I could find during like his senior year in high school even. And I followed him up for several years after. And then I started studying game used jerseys a little bit more, because I realized with the jerseys where people didn't know what they had. So people would just say, hey, this is just a jersey. And I'm like, no, that's a game jersey. Or, you start studying this tagging. And I was really researching the tagging. I was using databases. There's a few people out there that had some databases that you could buy a membership at the time. And I was just trying to know more than the other people, with the items, and just try to be able to identify what's a true game, or what size did these players wear. And back then that was before photo matching. So really that's all you're really trying to look for, right? Is it the right size? Is it the right uniform? You'd probably do a little bit of style matching, right? To see, is it the right like logo, or, because I've seen a lot of that, right? Wrong font, crazy things. So just educating myself, and then trying to get the items authenticated properly, and be able to sell them for a premium, because I did the research, and of course, yes. So I started my own auction house in 2006. We're called Modern Marvels. We were focusing on modern high-end collectibles. So again, at the time, LeBron, I remember I had like a Randy Moss game used jersey, my first auction, a lot of high end modern trading cards as well. And we did that for a few years. And then I kind of left the biz. I graduated, I went to work in finance in the city. That was going to be the whole big thing for me. And, I found myself studying game used jerseys like on the side of working. And I was consigning them to a bunch of different auction houses. And then when Ken started Goldin, I was consigning to Ken regularly, actually. So Ken was my consignment director at Goldin. And consigned for many, many years to Goldin. And then I moved back up north from Nashville, where I spent a little time. My wife's from Nashville. And yeah, I went to go work at Steiner, so I got the job over there, and it was really cool to see the inner operations of a company that works directly with the Yankees and the Knicks and the
Right.
Rangers, and
Yeah.
I had to credential the Yankee Stadium. So you really get to see now MLB authentication, right, and how that works. And
Mhm.
that's where I learned, like, wait a minute, oh, so the Yankees or some of these other teams, they only authenticate the jersey to the day they take it off. And you're like, what about the whole homestand or road stand? And of course, that's where, photo matching part comes in because a lot of those MLB authentications, as you've seen, right? You catch the whole road stand. So, again, just learning that gap. Came to Gold in 2019. So we're touching 7 years, actually.
Mhm.
We're right at 7 years at Golden. And it's been awesome, just watching it grow. I used to do reality TV back in the day. So I was like, let's get another show going or let's do something. So the Netflix series, Can't Collectibles, has been awesome. Ken loves it. We all enjoy it. 3 seasons, top 10 show on Netflix right now. And of course, the auctions at Golden. Not only are we selling sports, at this point, we're doing comics, pop culture, coins. We have a historical auction. We have a World Cup auction coming up. So we have so many things, that we're doing at the same time. We have a Star Wars toy auction live right now. And I'm involved in all of it. I'm the head of
Mhm.
revenue, but I'm literally one day I'm at a coin show, the next day I'm at a Comic Con. But really for me, Gaming's jersey and my passion for collecting that. Um, that's like my
Yeah.
collection. Like my
Yeah.
collection is game used.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And there's so many things that I want to touch on about what you just talked about throughout the interview here. But talking about the TV stardom has kind of gone full circle from the very beginning of your career to where you're at now, and we'll get to that. And definitely want to dive into the Yankees game used at Steiner. We'll get to that. But I want to start on one of the things you mentioned a couple minutes ago there of the LeBron. So this is really interesting, where you were collecting LeBron, looking for game used before he even had graduated high school. I mean, he was a phenom. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, all of that. But talk about if you're willing to share any pieces that you were able to track down and get early on, and kind of take us through that ride.
I knew selling a few of the special ones were I was gonna one day look back and be like, I want to keep this one, I want to keep that one. One thing about me is I'm in the business of, what I mean, like we buy, sell, trade memorabilia. I've always been like flipping memorabilia. I hardly hold anything, for myself. Couple select pieces, and usually it's like a weird scenario where like connection or some reason why I'm particularly holding it. So with LeBron, similar scenario. What I did was I was just looking out. I was looking online to find anything I could find. And I remember like specifically like some of the cards that we see now that are like millions of dollars. I
Hmm.
remember looking at them for 6,500 buy it now best offer for years and never no movement and stuff like that. So I just remember looking around. So for me there wasn't a lot of professional uniforms out there, obviously. So I started looking around his senior year and then into his rookie season was when I really kind of got into it. And I kind of stumbled into it, actually. I um i was just trying to find good authentication, right? Like, and that was the problem. And to be honest, I would have spent the same amount of money on the best photo match, but that service wasn't available. So I remember I spent $6,000 when I was 23 years old. You know what I mean? Like a good chunk of money that I made myself at whatever an hour I was making, right? And and I got a LeBron Olympics jersey. So remember, right after his rookie season, he plays in the Olympics. This jersey came with a letter from a pretty reputable auction house at the time. It came with another letter from another game used auction house that's still around, and one other. certifications. So I'm looking at it like you have 3 letters, right? And remember, at the time, it was very limited letters you could have. And it had all 3, and I spent the 6 grand. And fast forward a few years later, I was looking to sell it. And when I went to list it, I actually consigned it to the auction house one of the letters was on. And I'm waiting for the catalog. Like this is the day you just send it in and kind of wait for the catalog. Like, you're not like, let me review the descriptions, this and that. A lot of the times you couldn't even like see any of that. And the catalog comes out and it says team issued. Now we all know the big difference, game used, team issued,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, hold on. And I'll be honest, I've never pulled an item from any auction
Mm-hmm.
ever. I've never called and complained about any listings. I've let it ride. I've lost tens of thousands. I've let it ride. I've never been one to cause a problem. And I see Team Nation, and I immediately call up because I'm, into this thing heavy, and obviously I'm looking for the money. And they said, look, we learned that he wore a different size. Since then, we've learned that he wore a different size. And unfortunately, things have changed, new information, right? I'm sure we've all heard that. New photos come out, right? And so we're going to have to list it this way. And I said, look, I want it back then. Just give it back. And they said, okay, no problem. And I think they had the starting bid like $800. It was going to sell for like 1,200 team issued. So they sent it back and they took their letter away. And at this moment, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm educated. I'm collecting for 15 plus years. I'm studying, tagging and all this stuff. I buy the best authentication I could find, and it ends up getting taken away because it's the size. Again, you didn't have the match where you could see that's the jersey.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I ended up actually, honestly, in the process, I consigned it to another authenticator, and they knew that the game used jerseys for the Olympics were from a guy named Brad Gart. Oh no, I'm sorry, not Brad Gart. Brad was a local guy in around Ohio who was like sourcing the high school jerseys that you've probably seen, letters of provenance and things like that. But he actually gave me a jersey that he had a letter from Drew Joyce to him, from him to Drew Joyce, different jersey that was great, and I sold that for $3,000. But anyway, getting back to this jersey, so it turns out it had a Pro-Am Sports, Wayne Otto. He's since passed, a pioneer of this business as well, from North Carolina. And it turned out that he got the jerseys, and he's like, yeah, that's the jersey I got. And he wrote a letter. And I actually got his letter, and I listed it in like a straight eBay auction, and I lost like half my money on the jersey. And it turned out, I think the jersey ended up being okay because it was sourced that way. But again, I look at the bad side, I lost half my money, and that's because the jersey was okay. If the jersey was pure junk, fake tags, right? I've seen these guys with these collections from the 80s come in and say, my dad, was buying this his whole life. This is worth 10 million. And I'm like, yeah, you got all the big names, Hank Aaron, this and that, Pete Rose, and it's all no good. I've seen a guy's $1 million collection turn to nothing, and then he ends up with just fees, right? Like at the end of it. So, it's really interesting. But yeah, so my LeBron store, I made connections through people like that in the area. So I bought another jersey that had one of Brad's letters on it. And anyway, so he hit me up direct and was like, hey, I got more. And so we started talking, and he was getting the stuff right from the school, so there was people in the area that were collectors when LeBron was in high school that could get the stuff when the high school floor, the gymnasium floor broke. They were taking pieces and selling it, so I was there at the time. I collected all that. I had bandanas from the school, a lot of the high school programs, a lot of that stuff.
Madhouse over there.
Yeah, I once was offered LeBron's. Like third ever game used jersey, and honestly, I just didn't trust it. I didn't trust, like he wanted too much money. And it turned out to photo match like his third or fourth career jersey, and I would have made like $400,000. And I turned it down because, you got to trust the sellers too at that time. Yeah. So, I just figured it was just another team issue. Passed up on it. It ended up photo matching many years later. And I was like, I remember that jersey. And I'm like, and then the guy who got it told me where he got it from. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was the jersey. And we sold it on Goldin for like over 400,000.
Yeah. I think I remember that one when it was at Goldin. But, yeah, I mean, that's always clearly you were ahead of the time. There's only so much you could do when the photo matching was not what it later became, and everything else. And so it sounds like you had some close ones you almost got to, and then just a ton of pieces that you were able to learn from. But
here's what stinks, though. I had the right idea, right? LeBron photo match jersey would have been the buy, right? So I knew what I was looking for, and I guessed right on LeBron, which wasn't hard. But the credible items weren't available. Mm-hmm. It turned out that's why the cards are all, good. The Upper Deck at the time in 0304 put out a team issued jersey, and then LeBron signed it, and people were taking the Upper Deck stickers off, getting like different letters, authentication on the jerseys. So it was the Wild West. People were just going crazy with LeBron stuff. So good way to learn. Good way to
Yeah,
learn when there's a lot of that too.
exactly. A good foundation for the game use experience. But I want to jump over to a little bit about your experience working at Steiner, and then I'll get into a couple questions about the Yankees memorabilia specifically. But what was it, just in general? What was it like working at Steiner? What do you remember about that time?
Um, it was what I wanted to do, right? For me, this was a career at a company that I had known forever. I go to Yankee games, I see it. I reached out to them when something clicked in my mind where I said, as much as finance, you can make money and you're doing. I just wasn't happy.
Mhm.
I wasn't happy because every conversation I had to have was like, do we want to buy life insurance? Do we want a retirement plan? It just was not fun. And it was affecting just me being able to go out and socialize like normally and have fun with people because I'm always trying to like size them up and get business. So I didn't like that lifestyle. And I just decided to make a switch to what I wanted to do. Uh and to me that was like the turning point in my life, my career, in the moment where I just said, when I grew up, I was like doctor, lawyer. It was always like you had to do that, right?
Mhm.
And when I just finally said, "Hey, I want to do what I want to do," when I said that, I already had one 4-year-old son and another son on the way, and I made that choice with a lot of risk and support that I needed to make, and I didn't do it for financial reasons. Obviously, I did it because I just said I think I would enjoy it better. So I think
Yeah.
that's the best way to describe it. I went from the business world, to the world of I'm at like we're doing sports,
Something you're
collectibles.
passionate about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like my
Well, and
first
it's
day there, I'm
I,
right in the
I
mix.
Yeah, no, I love that too. And, you're talking about having the family, having to support the family. And, you know, obviously it's worked out well for you. You're in an amazing position now. But, uh, your kids, I'm sure, saw at that young age, they can tell if their parent is excited about what they're going to go do every day of their life or if they're not. And so, even if it's not the financial side at the very beginning, I'm sure your kids saw that you were happier and, you had all those positive impacts on them from making that choice.
Oh yeah, and the access that you had, right? So I would tell my buddies like, "Hey, you want to come meet Chevy Chase today?" Or "Hey, Lawrence Taylor's going to be at the office." Or all of a sudden, I'm like, "Wait a minute! Now I got Mariano and Jeter, and they're right here." And I was the
Yeah.
office manager, so they were like, "Dave, I need you to like when these athletes come, I need you to meet with them, and I need you to start looking at their collections and seeing what they got." And I just was like, "Great!" So they gave me, I got the access to all of them. And yeah, it was actually then I was like, "Okay, this is really fun because I grew up with
Yeah.
all these guys, and the closest I ever got was the stadium seating, if that. So now we're just in conversations regularly, um, and a lot of them did, have interest in selling their collectibles or finding out what it was worth, and I've got
That's awesome.
a lot of
That's,
great relationships across a lot of leagues now, and so
yeah.
it's been good, yeah.
So that's something that I didn't realize about Steiner. So I want to hear about this, where you were interacting with a lot of the, some athletes. I was picturing you get a big, shipment, you go pick up from Yankee Stadium, this big set of items, and then you catalog it, you inventory it, you put it online to sell. You're saying there was a little bit more direct interaction with some of the players. Talk about that.
Yeah, so Steiner's partnership with the Yankees was just that, right? End of the year locker cleanouts and,
Hmm.
jerseys so many times a year and so many months and pre-selling this one. And, you got the private sales team that's like, okay, we got the Judge jersey, who want it? We get the waiting list. So there was a lot of that. Um, but we did signings with the athletes. So the Yankees deal was one deal. The individual signings deal was totally separate. We had access to them through that deal, but the
Hmm.
individual athletes deal was like, hey, Mariano, he was in New Rochelle. We were in New Rochelle. It was like he would come to our office regularly. We need 200 pieces. We need 1,000 pieces. And for him, he's taking his time signing them all up. But we knew he was going to be there for several hours, and sometimes you get kind of bored, while you're there. So at least it was an opportunity to, at least get in there,
Get to know
and
them a little bit.
that yeah, that their memorabilia
Yeah.
might be worth something. And we did plenty of that. We did a Jeter deal where he was doing his game used through us too, because the team gets the jersey. Um, the bats belong to the players, the
Hmm.
cleats belong to the players, the helmets half and half, depending on where it's left or, at the end of the season and things like that.
Yeah.
So the athletes have some, wristbands. They have their own items, and then the team controls, certain pieces as well. So
Certain pieces, yeah, and I think that's something that has even changed a little bit probably since, 10, 15 years ago when you were, doing some of this where, I've heard I think one of the famous ones is Mike Trout put in his contract, I believe, his bats were gonna be his property, which I think otherwise they would have been property of the Angels, and so you see, yeah, these athletes starting to really take that seriously, the game use side of, "Hey, I wanna have control of my stuff," and everything like that. But yeah, talk a little bit more about the process at Steiner, especially on the game use part. So you talked about you had some player deals there, but as far as the partnership with the Yankees, what was that like? Were you directly involved in literally going to the stadium, or was there a team at Steiner as far as getting the pieces, inventorying them? Walk us through that process a little bit.
yeah, so I wasn't involved in the collection process at
Yeah.
all. I mean, I was head of the auction, really, so auction manager. So for me, show me the inventory or at least, what we have. So there was a whole partnership team that would be, hands on. Obviously, we had our Steiner holograms, we had our Steiner letters. Um, MLB authentication was around and actually was on all of the items while I was there, at least. So there was, but when the players were, like when Jeter was selling items like that, it might be a letter that just says Derek Jeter and Steiner, Jeter Steiner,
Mhm.
Mariano Steiner. So people can find different certs now. They can find the MLB authenticated Steiner certs, or they can find just regular game use certs. Now, the game use certs, people may or may not know this, they didn't have a database until 2016, maybe 2017, probably. So if you just go on the like Steiner database or try to type those item numbers in, all it did was match the cert. That was all it was supposed to do. It didn't go online anywhere until the last 10 years. So a lot of people are like, oh, my cert's not valid, it's not pulling up because they're looking at an autograph cert. They're not even looking
Mhm.
at the game cert. So a little
Mhm.
mushroom looking cert would have been the game used cert versus the oval, which is the signed cert. So a lot of things people don't understand. If you have a Jeter bat that has the oval, that's not saying it's game used Jeter bat. That's saying it's a signed bat. That's the signed one. So, just understanding the holograms. Um, but yeah, everything the employees would collect, they would certify. It was a little different when you were working with like the Knicks and Rangers because they had equipment managers and they would actually date on the tags the date, at least the equipment manager would date what date it was, then we'd get it. The bigger jerseys you might want to photo match. I thought it was unusual. The first time I was selling a Porzingis debut jersey. This is, when I was over there and we're selling the Porzingis debut jersey. And I go to one of my big guys and he's like, yeah, I'll take it. And then he's like, send me the high res images. And I'm like, we authenticated it. It's got the date on the tag. It's good. And he's like, I need to see the images. And then he matches it up and he's like, okay, second half, but it's fine. Or first half, whatever it was. And he's like,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, I'll take it. So he didn't even want to buy it even until he did all that, even with
Mhm.
I mean, I've seen it, right? They put the wrong date on it. We've seen it all. You know what I'm saying? So you just want to be extra, extra sure, and that's why right
Yeah.
now, Goldin, if it's like a 10K and up item with any sort of third party, either whether it's MLB or NFL or any of that, we typically add a photo match. Even so, like we just did it for Skeens's World Baseball Classic jersey. It sold on MLB auctions like a week before we got it. Right before it showed up to us, we had our game used auction starting and we photo matched it to that day and actually photo matched that jersey, photo matched like his photo shoot, so we did
Mhm.
find more matches, on that as well, so yeah, we'll do that for pretty much any 10K and up, it's just, you know what it's like, right? When you're going to buy something like that, obviously
Yeah.
you guys are looking differently than mine are, but I want to know, hey, like, yeah, it's
Right.
a little unsettling to think you spent
Pinpoint it a little bit more, yeah. Yeah,
gone
and
through
it's,
what I've gone through, right? Like
yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, have the, yeah, the research done, but, yeah, you mentioned the MLB authentication back in the day. I've always been a big fan of MLB authentication. I think they do it really well, and I think they've gotten better over time too, but you talked about, a lot of times and they're better at this than they used to be. It used to be they'd authenticate it to the day it was pulled from use, but you wouldn't have any of that history of what games was it used in before that. And then sometimes they would just authenticate it as team issued, where,
end of the year
they were
lottery.
like,
That's a bet.
maybe it was used, maybe it wasn't. A lot of times it was. and again, credit to them for if they were unsure, they were going to go down to team issued. They weren't going to make the mistake the other way and call it game used when it wasn't. So credit to them there too. But yeah, that was where
Those
photo
helmets are bad.
matching.
Come on, the helmets have pine tar and
Right.
marks. The patch
Exactly.
jammed and cracked, and it's like team issue. So some of
Yeah.
that you can make a little bit judgment, but the
Right.
jerseys are cool because yeah, for all you know, it's an extra they never wore, and next thing you know,
Right.
it's worn in the playoffs or something, and you're like, oh, that was cool.
Yeah. So yeah, that's always a lot of fun. But last question on Steiner. Any favorite pieces you got to handle or auction while you were there in terms of, I assume Yankees memorabilia, but yeah, any favorites you can remember?
You know, I mean, I think my best moment there, or at least most memorable, was the Yogi Berra auction. We sold Yogi Berra's entire estate. We sold his 1961 jersey, I believe it was, as well. So that was a fun auction. That was really, really cool. Obviously, Steiner's relationship with Yogi and the Berra family, so that was pretty much lined up, for me more or less. But I'll tell you, it was an amazing sale. And actually, in that sale, we got Don Larson to sell his collection because we were selling yogis. So we sold Larson's as well. But if it's one item that I have to identify, this item is probably worth way more than it was when we sold it. When we sold it, it was the record. Actually, it smashed the record for any rookie jersey ever worn that was sold during this player's rookie season. I don't think it's a record anymore, just because of what rookie jerseys are kind of going for out of the
Hmm.
gate now. I believe it was $162,000. It was Aaron Judge's debut jersey
Hmm.
that we sold in the year he broke the rookie home run record. And I
Hmm.
remember we had it at the National, and it just kept bidding, and these guys were fighting on it, and a lot of guys were in it, and we're just like, what if this guy is like a bust? Now, I get it. He's a big rookie season, but everyone's like, oh, well, he's no better than this guy, or what if he's the next that guy? And I'm like, guys, if he's going to be the next that guy, he's not, he's still way away. Like, I mean, like, he has a long way to go. Uh, the guy who did win it, I still talk to, regularly, which is nice. And, that's pretty cool. And honestly, I mean, 162K, it sold for
Turned
then.
out well for him.
How many millions is that jersey right now? It
Yeah.
would easily be millions of dollars, so
Yeah.
so yeah, it's one of those jerseys that at the time you're like, hey man, that's a big risk. The guy who actually bought it prior to that spent five figures on it, like right after his debut. And even that was a risk, but he made, 10X and then some.
Hmm.
But the guy who spent, 10X, luckily again, Judge turned out because, yeah, that could have gone the other way,
Yeah.
drastic. Well, a lot of
Well,
these,
it's
Gary Sanchez, like they don't,
right. It
you know,
doesn't always pan out, but yeah, it was kind of like what you saw with LeBron. I mean, Judge was probably not quite as obviously hyped as LeBron. Probably no one's been as hyped as LeBron was, but yeah, no, it's luckily it worked out well. Yeah, those top prospects I feel like can kind of
well, we
go
didn't.
either way.
So we didn't sign Judge. We didn't do a signing deal with him his rookie
Huh.
season, actually. And I remember the conversation with Brian Cashman that Brandon was having. I was in the room, and the exact conversation went high risk, high reward. And we're like, okay, we're not in the business of like high risk anymore, right? Let's go get
Hmm.
Curry. Let's go get, you know what I'm saying? So we were like, yeah, not interested, like for us to sign like a long term deal. And normally we would with like a Yankees rookie and everything like that. And we didn't sign him because, yeah, you didn't know, right? You just didn't know. And he came out his rookie year and, he showed some signs of, some power, but didn't have a good average, at least in 2016, his debut season. And yeah, I mean, it's crazy to where he became now, right? Like one of the best
Yeah.
Yankees on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One of the greatest players, yeah, of all time. But okay, I want to shift gears a little bit and get into your TV stardom. I want to ask you, have you Googled yourself recently? Because I Googled you when I was doing research for this, and it cracked
Oh
me up
man,
the
oh man,
photo
yeah,
that came up.
yeah. You can't not see me there.
So,
I'm probably well aware of what's there. I don't think I've Googled myself in the last few months, which is actually probably a long time for me. When the show's out, you always try to see if
personal
more.
record for you.
Yeah, it's just been a little bit. I just haven't
Yeah,
done.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
for the
no, it's
listeners, I'll just leave it at this. Your title now of head of revenue at Goldin, the picture that comes up perfectly fits your current title of head of revenue. So it kind of cracked me up a little bit there.
okay.
But I want to talk about your TV experience a little bit, because you did kind of some reality TV shows when you were first young, and then it's kind of gone full circle to where now, um, you do the Golden Touch, and talk about kind of your experience doing TV, and what that's been like both when you were younger and now doing the Golden Touch.
Well, I always said if TV doesn't work out, I'll just go be a, a sports auctioneer. So no, look, obviously that's an amazing goal, right, to have. I was a little more realistic, I kind of got lucky. I was into filmmaking from a younger age. And, when I went to college, I was a major in English just because, again, I was going to go to law school. And I was taking an elective course and I took filmmaking. And I really just found it. I had a skill set to make film and I enjoyed it. And like me and my buddies, like college age, right? So we went out and made some films and I got an A in the class. And I was like, oh, great, I have another elective. I'll take filmmaking too next year. And at that moment, I realized, oh man, like I actually have a few credits now in filmmaking and I enjoy it. And there was a minor. You could be a minor at Montclair State in filmmaking. So I actually minored in film. And with that required you had to take 2 years of acting classes, 4 years of filmmaking classes, and a few other, like, film study classes where you had to study, like, historical films, and, it was a full program, and, I went through the program, and I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed acting so much that I landed a lead role in a off-Broadway type play when I was 21 years old, and, that was an experience. I was on stage for 45 minutes. I was a lead role. It was the first thing I'd ever done. And that we'd fill the state, we'd fill one of those, what do you call auditoriums, every night. I was the Bergen County Players, and I played Hal Carter. It was William Holden's role from this like 1960s film, and I was this out of towner who came in and tried to steal the girlfriend, and I mean, the role fit me or whatever, but it was kind of cool. So from there, I just kind of got into filmmaking, and I went to like try to find auditions, and I auditioned with Warner Brothers for Eliminate, which was like Blind Date, and I got the role there, so I filmed an episode of that. It aired like 3 in the morning. Nobody watched, and it was kind of just okay, cool. Like I'm just building a resume, kind of trying to get into some stuff because I was right there, North Jersey, New York City, so I'd pop right in. And my mother was very supportive. Fortunately, like she was like, "You should go do this, and like I'll get classes for you, and I'll get you the agent." And I was kind of like, "No, when I'm 40, I want to like be able to like know what my next paycheck's coming and not have to like be looking for work." So acting was never like a thing where I thought I'd want to do it because I'm a business minded kind of guy. And I was like, no, I need like business. Like I just, a little bit more old school in that regard. But
Mhm.
anyway, they had me in the system at Warner Brothers, and I got a phone call one day and they're like, "Hey, we have a new dating show coming out and we're looking for, single guys, and we came across your profile. We think you'd be a good fit. Do you want to come audition? It's a show for VH1." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Drove into the Paramount building, auditioned for this show, never watched Flavor Flav or any of those VH1 shows. I just was busy. I was doing so many different things and I was in college. So I just never really, I didn't know what it was. I'd seen it, I'd heard of it. Next thing you know, I landed the role. They cast 20 guys from the pool across the world, all over. And I made the top 5 on the show, and it became the number 1 show in the history of VH1. And
Hmm.
the first day the first show aired, I had like 70 new friend requests on like MySpace. Like you could just tell, like, whoa, what just happened? Like people watch this. I get a call from my buddy. He's like, "Hey, the next day I'm at the bar and I'm here with a bunch of girls and they all watch your show. Can you come here?" Again, this is 2 days in, and I'm just like, this just the beginning. And the show grew and grew and grew. And for 3 years, I did 3 different VH1 shows. I just toured the country making just appearances, mall appearances, signings, just you name it. I mean, I went international. I got to see every state in the US pretty much. It was really met a lot of cool people and just, kind of bounced around. I met all the real world guys. I met, I was kind of in that group with all those guys for years. And back then it was a little different. It wasn't like a thing where I was becoming this influencer and I was using my social media to make money. And, it was kind of more looked down upon, more so in like the business world where it was like, well, you're a reality guy. Like, you're not going to come to this company and sell insurance or do this or that, and that's kind of what I was trying to do after that. That's what I did after that. But the appeal, luckily, a couple of people recognized that from MetLife and National Life and got me, job opportunities. And I did really well because I knew a lot of people and I realized that it's hand in hand. But yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy, So
Yeah.
that ended in 2000, almost 20 years ago. 2009 was the last show that I did. I had 3 kids since then and just been working in the sports biz and just kind of had the itch to do something. So I actually started a show, What's It Worth, in like 2016 on Facebook. We did it on the Facebook, and we had like 2, 3 thousand viewers. The show was called "What's It Worth," and I would just appraise stuff on the fly. And I kind of like people started like, "Who's this guy? He knows his stuff a little bit," you know. So
Hmm.
kind of started building a little reputation in the sports collectibles business. But I was still kind of like, "Hey, what's next?" You know, like there's got to be something else. So believe it or not. So I actually pitched a pilot at Steiner. We were kind of playing with the ideas of different shows, and Brandon did TV shows. So I had pitched some pilots, and they didn't pan out. And when I came to Goldin, I can't even take credit. Frank Denote, who was here, and another guy who was here, basically were like, "Hey, we want to write a show." And I was like, they're like, "Are you in?" I was like, "Sure." And we just for years like had meetings and met with producers. And when we finally got acquired, when the Turner Group came in, they're like, "Hey, why don't you meet the guys who created the Pawn Stars?" And sure enough, they're like, "Okay, let's refilm this pilot. It's not great." And so we came in, we redid, we did all this stuff, and yeah, we got 6 offers, and including Netflix. And here we are, no, top 10 show on Netflix 3 years in a row. Right now
Hmm.
we're deciding our next moves, but it's pretty cool to be still at it and kind of back doing it. And what was fun was people who watched the earlier shows, they definitely, the people who know, and those are like the OGs, so to speak. So they'll come in and be like, "Hey, and when I'm at shows like trade shows, I go worldwide now, Germany, you name it. I see people who remember me from both or one or the other, and it's really cool. The difference, though, between the shows is with King Collectibles, the kids. And when you're at the trade
Right.
show, you have the 10-year-olds, the 9-year-olds, the
Family
8-year-olds.
show. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just totally different vibe, than the first ones. But that's what's awesome about it. I love that
Yeah.
because we're getting to influence the youth. They look up to us. So we're kind of helping grow with that new group of people. Those kids that are watching it now are going to be running this business in 10, 15 years, and hopefully they remember us. And look, hopefully we're still doing it.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
that's
it's yeah, I
oh
mean it's awesome that King of Collectibles has gotten that exposure. I think it clearly has helped boost the industry at large of sports memorabilia, sports collectibles. And I'm still a little bit bitter. I came out in season 1. I remember it was you and I and one of the other team members there at Goldin. We filmed a little bit about photo matching for a Lionel Messi jersey, and I actually had Damien on, who was the consigner of that jersey. He was on the podcast a couple months ago, but
didn't you get like a brief? Didn't you get like a little brief maybe moment? They cut it down a
no,
little
we
bit.
yeah we taped a full scene and everything, and they did an interview with me, but hit the cutting room floor. But I remember
It
Ken
happened.
said. Ken told me maybe he was just trying to make me feel better. He said 70% of what got taped ended up not making the final cut. So that was like,
Oh,
okay, I feel a little better.
I had guys fly internationally to come be parts of many scenes, and it's
Yeah.
tough for me. I'm managing relationships as well, and I can't control what makes it or doesn't. So yeah, I mean, absolutely, you never know. So yeah, definitely don't feel
Yeah.
bad about that.
No, no.
It's occurred to
It was
many,
still a
but
lot of fun, and
yeah,
a lot of fun, and I got to be a co-star to lead Dave Amerman,
there
so
we go,
so
there we
that
go.
was good. But
Well,
well, I want to get to yeah,
hopefully we
I
can
was gonna
keep
say I
the
want to
show.
get to Golden a little bit,
Yeah, let's
and
support.
talk game used at Golden, because obviously you guys are probably the biggest game used seller at auction. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about kind of the importance of game use at Golden, and like what is it what is it the game used brings that is important to Golden? Why does Golden see game used as being as important to you guys as it is?
Well, for those who know and those who may remember, Golden's first handful of auctions was very game used heavy, primarily game used.
Mhm.
It could have been seen as more of a game used auction house. Actually, I'm sure it probably was.
Mhm.
Ken acquired Game Used Universe, so Game Used Universe became Golden, as well. And they were running game used auctions that they were kind of up and coming, and that was a great forum for game used. And yeah, when Ken started Golden, the game used prices were crazy. I remember Jeter bats going for 5,000 plus in the first auction, and me thinking I can go buy one for $2,500, and these were the prices at the time. And yeah, I just remember like I got to get in the action. The first ever auction of Golden, I won an item, and I won Stanton's first ever professional jersey from
Hmm.
single A, first ever career home run, all that. I was looking for a Stanton, Golden just happened to have it. So it was a very game use heavy auction. Obviously, look, we we sell whatever the supply brings and the demand, is right on the site. So, it was always our goal to keep game used as a prominent, piece of our business. The cards obviously are what they are, and you can sell millions of dollars of cards. And, I mean, it's they're easy to scan, and, like the authentications are a lot more black and white, right? Processing, it's a little bit simpler. Game used, you need like an expert to say, let's go A, let's go B, let's go C. There's a lot of different ways and outcomes you can have it. So, we've kept it so much in our business that we actually started separating. We still run in our standard elite auctions. We have monthly elite auctions every month, but we actually, and you'll see game used items in every monthly elite auction, but we now have quarterly game used sales that are only game used items, and they could be 300-400 lots, it could be 800-900 lots. And actually, we just finished one. It was great results. And the market is hot for game used. It's really crazy to see like current player bats going for 20K plus, and players that were 5K are now 20K. And it's just the
Mhm.
market of game used is incredible. But our summer game used auction, which I don't even have the totally pencil on the calendar yet, probably August to September, has we already have 400 plus amazing game
Mhm.
used items lined up and ready to go, and we're continuing to grow that. So, our game used auctions are continuing to get bigger and bigger. And the prices have been great because we took the cards out of them. And it's just for game used collectors. So you know what
Mhm.
it's like. If you're a
Split
game
it
used
up.
collector, do you want to go on the auction the night where it's all, a lot of trading cards or historical items or whatever, right? Or do you want to know like, hey, tonight's the night. I need to make sure I'm there. I need to like tonight's where I'm going to find something I want to buy, right? So we made that night special for a game used collector. So it has a little bit of that older feel to it, where it's like hopefully all the game used guys are joining that night and saying, hey, we all need to be here, for this auction. So we've kind of been separating out, specific categories. Vintage
Mhm.
runs by itself now. We still put it in every elite auction as well. Again, comics, pop culture, we all run these in their own sales, at this point. We pulled Pokemon cards out of our regular elites, and now they're just in TCG elites. So we've really isolated the audience, and we're still finding getting 1,500 lots in those specialized categories. So you just don't want a 10,000 lot auction to do a couple times, a month or a year. So yeah, the last game use sale we did, we set the record for the most expensive hockey jersey of all time. Wayne Gretzky's jersey sold for $2.8 million. The entire sale did, I think it was a little over $6 million of just game used items. So very healthy, and again, we're looking good for the next one. And of course, the Golden 100 coming up has some of the best in class game used. Our current
Yeah.
elite auctions that are alive have it, and we have two World Cup auctions that are going to have some amazing, soccer jersey collections and selections, things like that. I'm sure
Give
you've been
us
some of that come
yeah,
through. Huh.
give us a little sneak peek of maybe just a handful of some of the items on the game use side that are coming up in those auctions,
Man,
if you can.
I mean, the one that came to my mind right away was so big that I don't know if I want to say that one, so I'll hold that. But let's just
Save
put
it.
it this way: got Kobe, got LeBron, got Luca, got Curry, a big one, and a big Kobe too. But outside of that, we got the Messis, the Ronaldos, and we have some really cool Ronaldos, like historic moments coming up. And then in the next game used auction, we have an NFL game used jersey collection, over a few hundred jerseys, and you're going to see Randy Moss, you're gonna see Dante Culpepper, you're gonna see just like some cool names like over the Eli Manning, Peyton Manning, so be on the lookout for that one coming up. That'll be, again, August to September, but you're gonna see almost, if you could think of a all-star, caliber, NFL player in the last 20, 30 years, that he may be,
Mhm.
in that collection. So yeah, that's in-house now. We're still just starting to work on it, but I could go on forever with that stuff.
Yeah, no, there's all sorts of stuff, I'm sure, and the listeners will have to keep an eye out for that. If you're looking for any particular piece, Golden will probably have it in the months ahead. But talk a little bit about, uh, I'm sure there's so many pieces since you've worked at Golden. I think it's been 7 years now you've been at Golden. Favorite pieces you've gotten on the game you side that you've gotten to be a part of selling, and kind of what that experience has been like for you.
I always resort to the Kobe jersey. The Kobe jersey that we sold of 2020, 2021, 2021 maybe.
Yeah,
$3.6 million.
yeah,
And this was before you had $1 million Kobe any jerseys or
yeah.
anything. really. Even cards at $1 million were very scarce. And it just was a perfect storm, with everything from the timing to the Hall of Fame induction. I think it ended up ending like that a couple days later. We actually had it on display at the Hall of Fame induction. So again, just the crazy part is the winning bidder found a video we made for TikTok that just happened to go kind of viral at the moment. And yeah, it was a late night. It was about late night back and forth. And, I usually am up to the final whistle, but I went down around a little after midnight. And we were over $1 million. And I remember just seeing the final number at 3.6. Um, and just, I remember texting the consigner, the next day. Actually, he texted me first, but I think he sent one of those like eyeball, like type emojis. And it's just one of those moments you just don't forget because
It's awesome.
him and I were talking about 100 grand, 150 grand, when we got the jersey. And even that would have been not an easy task, right? Luckily, we got the jersey. It photo matched. Crazy story is the jersey was actually consigned to a competitor earlier, like a year earlier, and they actually gave it back and they never tried to match it. They just assumed it wasn't going to be good, something along those lines. And actually, probably saved it led to the guy making millions because we got it matched. And
Yeah, yeah, and, I
yeah,
love that you mentioned that one because it was a piece that we were able to work on a resolution. We matched it to a number of dates, and so I'm happy to hear that your favorite was one that we were able to make a resolution photo match to. But yeah, no, that was an awesome jersey. I mean, that's got to be on my short list as well on the resolution side of things for top
yeah.
pieces we've done. So
It's not easy. I think a lot of people don't understand, right? Like it's not easy. Obviously, a '96 basketball jersey with the bigger, holes a little bit easier, but oh, I know this is good. I know that's good. But to get an actual res match, full res match, we've sent you stuff where like we know it was this day, it comes from the brother, the whatever, and you're like, look, possible is as best as I can give. You're not just gonna hand it over, even though you're looking at it saying it's probably this jersey. I know in your mind you're saying it's probably this jersey. I just can't conclude it. So people don't realize a conclusive match is, it's what it is, what it means.
yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I know we got to wrap it up here. You have somewhere to be, but talk do you have any final plugs for just say one more time those golden auctions that are coming up? Uh
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look, obviously the summer game used auction, the big one coming up in August. If you guys have some game used you want to get in, whether it's $500 or 500,000 or 2.8 million like that Gretzky jersey, hit us up, sell@goldin.com. And we'll get back to you. Guys can hit me up on Instagram as well at Dave12PACK. So it's at Dave12Pack. A lot of people hit me up direct on IG. I do a lot of my business there, and I'm always active there as well. So yeah, check out all the auctions at Goldin. We've got the weeklies, the elites, but the game used ones are the big ones. You'll always find game used. We try to make sure it's always on the site anytime you come. If you ever come and you look at the site and you don't see it, let me know and I'll at least get you a list of stuff I can find for you.
awesome. Well, I had a bunch more questions written down, Dave. We're going to have to get you back on in a few months because that was a lot of fun and really appreciate the time. Thanks to everyone for listening to this week's episode of the Game Used Podcast, and we'll see you next time.